So, something different tonight. I wanted to give a rundown as to why I enjoy the MC707 for my Dawless setup, my primary Dawless setup. And, you know, you have the usual suspects, the MPC lineup, you have the Kai Force, you have the stuff from Electron, the Digitact, Syntact, you have other groove boxes like that, expensive ones, less expensive ones, the things out of the Novation. So you have a lot of options, right? As far as things to choose from. The thing I like, there's some very important things I like from Roland. Now, with the first things first, right? I prefer this than the sample-based groove boxes or brains or sequencers because those are sample-based. You know, those are run primarily through samples with the afterthought is synthesizers. Whereas with the 707, MC707, the MC101, and the MV1, their goal is to start off with synthesis, and sampling is an afterthought, which to me is a better flow in the sense that you don't have to worry about a lot of copyright claims and stuff when you have, you know, built-in sounds. This stuff is, you know, you're sound designing pretty much or using presets, whereas sampling can get sketchy because the algorithm's really good now at detecting what's going on, right? With basically they're taking the art out of sampling. So I wanted to minimize my reliance on sampling. So there are a couple things I wanted to discuss. First thing, there's about 12 things that I like. First thing is the MIDI files. Let's get that out right. This imports the MIDI files that you can export from your DAW, from Scalar, from Ripcord. Your friends can email you over some sequences. For instance, this Neo Soul sequence that's playing in the background here by my 1010 Music Lemon Drop, which I'll show you a little later, I think. But it's over here in the corner. You've seen it in my other videos. It's playing the granular synth you hear in the back. So that's the Lemon Drop playing. So you can drop in your MIDI files, right? And load them up as clips. So for instance, if you can see the screen over here, I can just go create a new clip, go into the clip menu, go to MIDI file, select a progression somewhere, and just load that bad boy. But I don't want to mess up my groove, right? And it just loads up. The correct amount of steps, the sound, the scale, the key, all of that is done for you, the timing. It's MIDI. And this is good news because you can export or import, not just export, import. A lot of groove boxes can export the MIDI, live tracking them out into your DAW. However, this can import them without having to play them in and record them. That's a big time saver. So it's fast in that regard. That's number one. Number two, the synth. I started off. I touched on this a little bit. It's a synthesizer, so it's got really clean sounds. Clean sounds. You can EQ it in here and everything like that. But if you track this out in your DAW, you have through USB, mind you. You don't have any noise issues, so this can really keep the palette fresh, and that's very important in terms of synthesis. Is just the clean variety of sound design that you have here. Number three, clip launching. So every bank, every one of these 8 tracks has, I think, 16. Let's double check. Well, why not? Yeah, 16 different clips that can launch. So that gives you an Ableton style workflow, and you can mix and match and combine different sequences, clips into sequences and track out an entire song. It's not convenient, I'll give you that, but it does give you the option. When I say convenient, it's not super easy or intuitive, but they made it happen, you know. And you can still go through here and pick and play. You know, I want these drums with this hi-hat, whatever, and you have 8 tracks to play with. This is great. So I'm very familiar with Ableton, and that's why I appreciate the clips. So you can mix and match. You're not, dedicated or married to having to use one. You're not locked into. If you're familiar with Ableton, you know what I'm saying. You have the palette that you can mix and match. So that's number 3. The USB out. I touched on that. The USB out allows you to track out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 8 stereo channels and the 8 stereo channels for each one of these individual tracks. I'm sorry, 1 stereo channel for each track. That makes 8 stereo channels, and then you have another 2 channels, so 10 total. That's the stereo bus that actually processes through the master bus effects. When you're tracking through USB, it doesn't, which is a good thing. It does not track through the master effects individual tracks. It keeps it as naked and clean as possible, which is what you want when you're taking things in the box. The stereo bus is just for reference, using in the box. Speaking of this box, MC707, master effects, the delay, the reverb, the multi-effects, the compressor, the EQ, limiters, whatever you have, you can have that as a reference point. Also, each one will track out the MIDI. So it's a pretty 16 tracks, right? Basically, you got 8 audio, 8 MIDI, and 2, so 18 tracks, right? And then two for the stereo bus. The good news is that the MIDI, comes out on separate tracks, is its own track. This is wonderful. So now you can say, well, you know what? I didn't like this sound. Let me just change it over to this VST. So you can actually use this as a sketch box if you want to. Not that I'd use that, because this is self-contained. I want to do as much here within the box as possible without having to go in the box, the computer, the DAW. We gotta get our wording right. I gotta mix that up a little bit, get a little bit better with that. But anyway, that's the USB out. And speaking of USB, the USB in is also very convenient. There, and I think I'll touch on this later, but it basically acts like a storage device, like any other SD card. So you just plug it in, and you say this is external storage, and it makes it happen. There's no intermediate software that you need to use to offload or upload or anything like that, exchange data. You just file management, basic file management, and we'll touch on that. Hey, I/O, ins and outs. You have so many I/Os. You have your external inputs, which I'm using right now, right here for the Lemon Drop. You have your sends, your returns. You have your auxiliary outs. You have your headphones, 1/4-inch headphones. You have your stereo 1/4-inch mix outs, and you have your auxiliary outs. You also have a MIDI in, a MIDI out, and a MIDI through, or a second MIDI out, as you deem necessary. You have a USB out and in, and you have a power cable and a switch to switch between mic and line level for the aux in case you want to use a microphone or without a preamp or what have you, or with a preamp. There's a switch for line level versus mic level signals. So the I/O is great because you can feed things in, and essentially if you have 4 mono synthesizers, you can have 4 tracks dedicated within the synth being used, and as well as another 4 coming from outside. In this case, I'm using this as a stereo. So that takes up 2 tracks. So the I/O is great. It allows you to incorporate and build on your Dawless setup as you see fit in the future. File management, we touched on this. File management is great because it allows you to have subfolders and categories within folders. There's no special software. This is number 6, file management. It's awesome. You just drag and drop. I don't know how deep it goes, whether you're limited to 3 folders, 4 folders, whatever. But I've never had any issues. I just go ahead and create and dump some sounds, dump some files in there, some patches in there, and it always works. And it doesn't require any special software, third-party software from Roland or anyone else. This is awesome. A lot of boxes don't do that, including the Roland SB404. It's provided that you use their software to load different sounds and songs onto each pad. We're not going to talk about the SP404 Mark II here, but my point is that the file management is just basic. If you know how to use a computer, Android, you're golden. You know, there's nothing special there. All right. So the next thing, patch sharing. Okay, you can create a patch and email it out. It's I don't know what kind of file it is, whether it's sysx or whatever, but it works with the sound engine in here, Zencore. So you can also make your own patches on when you have your laptop open, your computer open. That's awesome. I prefer to do everything in here because they allow you to do it and they opened up a lot of structure. Let me show you a little bit about that. So if I go over here and I go to sound, let's go to sound and edit. I gotta use two hands, sorry. See, you can deal with your oscillators, have different layers within the oscillator, the amplitude, the LFOs, the envelopes, the effects, the mix, all of that stuff, the reverb and all that. You can pretty much customize every sound you want. As complicated as this looks, as long as you know basic sound design, they keep it in a order. As much as people like to complain about Roland's workflow and organization, I find it very based on engineering, both in the musical and scientific realm. So if you're familiar with basic routing, wiring, the layout of a mixer board, the layout of the music, that pretty much is what this is about. You'll be able to pick it up. Hey, see that? I'll get to that in a second, because that's actually another point. The MC707 MV1 integration. So the patches, the sessions, the projects, the sounds are all compatible within the Zencore family, including the keyboards and stuff like that. So across the board, your projects really, if you're invested into Roland, it's convenient for you to jam out an MC707, which uses 500 milliamps per hour or something like that. This uses, I think, 1500, but 500, and you jam out your little 4 tracks. You take out your SD card, or you hook up your USB cable to your computer, and you transfer it to this, and you have a bigger palette to work with. Or you send it off to somebody that has a keyboard, a workstation. So that's basically what that is. The MC707 was my first entry point into Roland gear. I bought 2 of them. One, unfortunately, I turned off when it was uploading its firmware or updating its firmware. So the problem with that is that it says don't do that because you break it. So I have to get back with Roland and let them fix that bad boy for me. But the good news is they can. The problem is it's not on the continent that I'm on right now. So I have to figure out a solution anyway. Sidetrack much. All right, squirrel. Faders, knobs, and pads. Oh my. This is performance-based, right? Whereas the MPC is production-based. A lot of groove boxes are production-based, except for maybe Electron, right? Electron, you can really perform on their devices as well. It's meant for you to grab knobs and twist, and the same thing here. This is very YouTube friendly, very content creator friendly. You don't really need any more than 8 tracks. I barely use 5. Sometimes I struggle with layers. But anyway, this is meant for, you got pads, you have your pads for performance, your faders for your volume, your filters, your reverbs, your sends, your returns, your, the layout is very friendly for performance and it looks good. It does look good. So number 10, the audio engineer workflow. If you're familiar with any mixer board, right? Left to right, top to bottom, all these channels are the same. If you know that, then you know how to find. So for instance, let me give you a breakdown, right? If I wanted to find the EQ, typically, where would you find the EQ? It wouldn't be all the way over here in the mastering section. It would be all the way over here in the track section. So you'd be like, okay, I need to get to this EQ. Now watch me mess this up, right? See, I got it on the first try. So I go to this track, I say shift selects this track, and I go, boom, EQ. I need to EQ this signal out. You turn it on, boom, 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 boom. You just do your settings with your gain, your threshold, EQ, and whatever. That's all the way to the left. and then when you want to deal with, let's say you want to deal with the timing of your performance, the timing of your track, as you may be able to see the light go across this track here. Let's say I have a problem with this, shift select that, and that's your performance area. So if you're familiar with the layout of musical equipment in terms of the mixer engineer, the audio engineer, the tracking engineer, the mixing engineer, the mastering engineer, then you're in a good place here, right? Mastering section is up here. So on and so forth. I've beat that horse to death. So you get the point. If you're familiar with audio engineering, you should be able to work your way through this, as difficult as it is at first. The first week or two, not even 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half, is pretty much like, wait, shift this, I need to do this and that. Okay, but then you pick up on it, right? So they did their best to keep it familiar to those within the science of music engineering, if you understand what that is. But anyway, number 11. So number 10 was the audio engineer workflow. Number 11 is energy efficiency. This thing is very energy efficient, I can operate this off of a very strong USB battery, or in my case, I prefer to play it safe and use a V-mount battery that they use in film production. 50 megawatt hour, something like that battery. It's about this big, about the size of any other USB battery. But those batteries come in different sizes, and you can get 5, 10, 15, 24 hours out of play out of those batteries that take, 45 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, which is why I think that this is the best way. I'm convinced this is the best way to be a content creator during load shedding, is using instruments like these, using the battery technologies like these, and using networks that help you grow, which is what Dawless Arcade is about. But we're not talking about that right now. So, number 11, energy efficiency. Number 12, the community. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. There's a couple, superstars. Tara Keith, tips and tricks. There's a whole bunch of guys that T-Break Beats. There's a whole bunch of guys and forums on Facebook and elsewhere that are very dedicated in terms of, like, you ask a question and they will pop up a video for you. I was like, man, I wish I could copy and paste and be like, oh, you don't know how to? I'll have a video up in about 30 minutes. and they'll do it, and it's awesome. I think that's very cool. There's a whole bunch. There's got to be at least 5 groups on Facebook alone where it's dedicated to either tutorials or networking, jamming, how-tos, DIY. Yeah, I don't know. Dawless in general. What's your setup? Show us a picture. We want ideas. So there's a lot of community support, including the Dawless Arcade group. Just putting that out there. So there's a whole lot more I could say about this, but this video is going to get long. So I just want to go over some things I think they could have improved, or they may want to consider for the next iteration. Sidechain. Right now you have to use a fake sidechain with the tremolo and the motion designer, which is best for synthwaves because it's got synthwave and EDM like that with repetitive beats. But for hip hop, you want a true sidechain. Not that I'm a hip hop producer exclusively, but you end up using external gear through the sends and returns like these bad boys. Let me see if I can get this in the shot. Like that. This is my HX Stomp and my RNC 1773. Yeah. So yeah, it gets kind of, well, anyway, this is not about external gear necessarily. So just know that the sidechain, I think they could have pulled it off somehow within the effects. Novation's done it. So I think they could get that on the next iteration. Send and return options. Why did I say they need improvement? Send and return options. Oh, yes. So there's some things that'll get in your way with the send and return. So if you send your instruments, let me show you. So if you say your audio track, your sound source, or audio insert is, what is it? Yeah. So basically you have your choice of where your your audio, and this might not be the correct screen, but anyway, you can choose between having your send and return dedicated to one track. So you can send one instrument to like my compressor or something like that. That wouldn't help for getting across the board. You could send your instruments that you need to the aux out, but that poses a different problem. Basically, there's a whole bunch of little nitpicky things. For instance, if you send it using the reverb, which will you can assign these knobs just by holding this down, and anyway, I won't get into the details, but you can assign all these knobs. Let me just show you. Might as well. So you can send for track 4, you can assign these knobs to different things, right? And one of the things you can send it to is your external send and return and what have you. But long story short is that it doesn't get 100% wet. So you can't get 100% wet if you want all of these affected by the external. So you have to commit to using one, and then that is 100%, but then that leaves the rest dry, and there's some other issues. So the send and return could have been better implemented in terms of getting an absolute wash of sound if you wanted that. You should have had that option. You shouldn't be left with some of the dry signal no matter what. That's not 100% what I think musicians want, But anyway, it's a nitpicky thing. It's so easily done to just track this out USB and do it in the box, or just go ahead and send. You can figure it out. Is basically you can work around it. It's just as far as you just have to commit to one method. You say, you know what, I'm getting my lead all the way into the wash, and just send that bad boy out by itself and just commit to that in terms of getting 100% wet and forget about the dry. You got to make decisions, is what I'm saying. And that's part of the allure to Dawless music and Dawless music production, is having to make decisions that are limiting. This is not a computer, and you don't want this to be a computer 100%. You want to be able to say, I have to make a decision. That forces you to be creative. It's wonderful. And that's true of all Dawless gear, by the way. The note stealing. This is the third thing I don't like. So number 1 was sidechain limitations. 2 is send and return options. 3 is note stealing. If there's not enough, you can actually assign your each instrument a certain amount of notes from 0 all the way to 10. Currently, I have all these turned off, and number 8 is 4. Only because I didn't want to get anything messed up if I was to press something and you get a loud sine wave in your ear. That's why I have all these turned down and everything off as much as I can, and the volume's down and the levels down, so that way I don't interrupt the smooth lemon drop granular synthesis. Yes, I love it. Okay, so note stealing. So what happens is this is supposed to have 128 polyphony, 128 note polyphony. The problem is that some of these sounds are complex. A sound like this done in this box, in the MC707, would take up like 32. You're playing 4 notes, a 4-note chord. It's actually like 32 notes being played, especially when they're held down. Legato will eat up a lot of that space. So now you're left with, your drums and your hi-hats going, you're missing notes. That happens sometimes, so you got to be careful how you use it, which is great. Now, this is why I love the I/O, because if you have 4 instruments doing sounds internally and you have 128 note polyphony, you're probably not going to run into issues. 5, probably not. 6, maybe. But the more tracks you use, the more complex sounds you use, patches you use, it'll eat up more polyphony. But because of the I/O, now you could say, you know what? I'm going to have the dreadbox, the lemon drop here, the dreadbox Typhon here. I'm going to have the micro freak here. I'm going to have the NTS1 over here. I'm going to have the, Hydrasynth here. And I'm going to have, and so basically you can do that for 4 instruments and have those come in mono and not have to steal any notes. And you're still using this as a MIDI sequencer, and everything will be tracked out into your DAW. Amazing. So anyway, we're supposed to be talking about things I want to improve, and I'm already gushing about the good stuff still. So let's go back. So the bass patches. It's not the best at basses. it'll get it done. You know, it'll get it done. But I don't really care for the bass sounds. They're not Dreadbox Typhon. I've been spoiled. What can I say? I fell in love with the Dreadbox, and I can't unhear what I heard. That's basically my issue. This will get it done, you know. But I'm so used to Dreadbox sound that in terms of analog monosynth sound that I would prefer to use that for my bass. I'm gonna get another Dreadbox. Don't tell anybody. All right. So number 5, the learning curve. Yeah, I might as well put this in there because Roland did a lot of firmware updates and it improved everything, the performance across the board. If though you probably don't recall, recalling. Anyway, for those of you that may recall, the MC707 did not do too great when it was first launched because it was up against the Akai Force and it was up against the Ableton Push 2. It was up against the MPCX and these things and the Deluge. And it didn't really do that great. But then those firmwares came out. That's when I bought. Those firmwares came out. Those firmware updates came out. I was like, yes, please. Especially since I already had the MC101 and I could see the value in those as sound modules. And just, you know, you're on an airplane, you're on a bus, you know, jamming out groove boxes. And those were, I still love my MC101. It just gets a little bit, there's a MC101 dance where you got to go between screens, and that gets a little finicky because it doesn't have these, so it kind of pulls a double duty with the sound pad. But that's not what this video is about. Long story short, I saw the potential once I got the MC101 updated, and once I recognized that, I knew the MC707 was for me. So this is why this is my workhorse. You know, I don't know if you want to see my lemon drop in work, but I'll try and get a shot. And of course my Yamaha AG, and that fluffy thing there is my Rode NTG3. You saw my HX stomp a little bit, and you saw the RNC 1773, really nice compressor, stereo bus sidechain compressor. That's it. That's the entire setup. You know, what would I add to this? Lemon drop, Dreadbox Typhon, SP404, because this is not the best at sampling. I left that out because you can get by with it. It's not on my list. But the sampling, this is not made for sampling, but it does have those capabilities. Let me see if I can show you. See, so you can go into sampling recorder and just sample this, for instance, and then have it record onto this track and play it back. But I've had some issues with looper, so I don't play with that so much. Whenever you start a track, you have a tone track, which is the internal synthesis. You have a drum track, which is sample based. Your drum plus compressor track, I don't play with that because that causes issues with the looper track. They haven't addressed it, and it's not necessary to use the drum plus comp because most of the other it's fine the way it is. The drum track, I'm not sure why they even bothered to have a dedicated drum plus compressor. It does sound different, but not anything you couldn't do over here by assigning. I'm getting off track by assigning a compressor to it. Anyway, 29 minutes in. The looper track, I don't play loops too much unless they're already preloaded into the SD card, and even then you have a limited amount. Let's see, you can have 8 of those, 1 of these, 7 of those drum tracks, and you can have all 8 tracks being tone tracks. Anyway, so that's why I would recommend the MC707 in 2023, especially for those of us that are experiencing load shedding in South Africa or are energy conscious and would like to have a continuous workflow from the Groovebox to the DAW and keep everything integrated. Roland did a very nice job catching what could have been a failure. This could have failed badly. But they firmwared the out of this thing. And thank you, Roland. Well done. Can't wait to reunite with my MC101 on a different continent. Get that. Groovebox on that when I'm out and about. And then, if need be, feed it over here. And then feed it to my DAW if I want to do that. And basically limit my reliance on expensive computer equipment. We have to adapt, people. We can't be beholden to being 4, 6, 8, 12, 24 hours without electricity. We have cell phones. Right now, all of this is recording directly into my cell phone. No changes to the audio quality. So with that, I just want to let you know, thank you, and hopefully you visit the website, dawlessarcade.com/landing, capital L. And maybe we can get something good going here and create a community that lasts the test of time. And all right. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.